Hey there, welcome. New channel, new thing. What are we doing here? Who the hell am I? What's this all about? Well, title of the channel should be hopefully helpful. Um, I lived in that island off the coast of America, Manhattan, for some 19 years. And then I met my wife, and there was a kid. And wow, so we moved out of there. Um, and I still miss Manhattan an awful lot because I think of it as being, it was home for an awful long time. But I'm an hour and 15 minutes, depending on traffic, north of New York City, in the woods of New York State. And it's nice up here. And this has become sort of this has been the home base now for a while. And let's talk about the music portion. So I'm in the woods. We got that covered. The music portion is, well, I have a fairly specific interest. Um, I'm a trumpet player, trumpet and flugelhorn, and um, I guess this gets complicated. My background, better put, my background was in jazz. I was always interested in jazz and got very into small group jazz and jazz improvisation, particularly in college. And yeah, that was really very defining in many ways because I just loved that kind of music. And but I was always into jazz. I was into jazz since I was a kid, but always into instrumental music since I was really very young. So I was never. So my interest is in instrumental music, whether that's classical music or jazz or ambient music, or what was it they're calling it, contemporary classical music. Also, anything that's really within that realm. And I'm just less of a person. I don't define music by. To me, music isn't first. My first thought about music isn't a pop song with a vocal. And I think most people do think of music that way. I think for the mass majority of people, that's what music is. It's a pop song, and it's a singer. And that always left me flat. I've never been that interested really in any of that. Now, as the years have gone by, I know a lot of singer-songwriters, and I know what they do, and I understand it better, and I understand the craft of what they do better, and so forth. And that's fine. I can understand. And there's lots of pop music I've liked forever. I think most people have. But in the main, it's I never sit there and said to myself, "Oh, I want to be a singer-songwriter." Because I don't want to be a singer-songwriter. What I want to do is, I've always been interested vastly, much more so by the idea of the clashing of tones to create, without words, to create an emotional effect and to affect people, to distract you. The art of that. And that's my interest. My interest is in how that affects people psychologically. And again, the power of distraction, which I think is basically our gig, and the art of that, and heavy on the art. I've always been interested in what how does it do that, and what are people employing to make that happen? Because I always think that's kind of the point. I think that's what we're doing. I think that's why we're doing it. So, throughout my life and my musical education, I was repeatedly disappointed. I kept thinking someone was going to talk about the art, why it makes you feel that way. That's obviously what we're doing, and almost never came up. The only thing that music education, I'm a big believer in music education, but in most formalized music education, at least what I grew up in, and I think still goes on, I think it's gotten vastly worse. It's prescriptive. This is how you play your horn. This is how you play an instrument. But what are we saying? Shh. This is how you play your horn. Just play the part right. It's become an act of craftsmanship, and I think at the highest levels, more so in the past, it was much more about an individual artistic expression. Even in classical music, the great soloists and the way they approach things were different. I think you think of Maurice Andre, and I think you think of an artist, even though he was one of the greatest technical players who ever lived on the trumpet. Anyway, So there's that aspect of it. My interest in most of the things I'll probably be talking about here are regarding instrumental music, and again, in that's a pretty wide swath. I think people think of music as being, oh, we all know what we're talking about. Well, it's big, it's enormous, and so yeah, I think there's. I'm going to confine myself to the areas that I'm interested in. Is that good for YouTube? Probably not. That's probably not great for a YouTube channel viewership. But hey, that's what I know, and that's what I'm into, and that's what I'm going to be passionate about. So it would make sense that I talk about that, right? Now let's talk about YouTube. YouTube, it's interesting. Not too long ago, one of the reasons I'm here is I saw a video by a fellow by the name of Andy Edwards, who is I believe he's a professor in England. He's a progressive rock drummer. That's been his background, and very knowledgeable guy. And I've thought it was great. But a lot of the content you see here is, frankly, spectacularly done. The production values are extraordinary, and it's you're seeing it's on a very high level. It's like watching really high end television in many respects. Really, really, really well done. It's great, right? And there's a lot of it, and that's fantastic. And I think some of us sit there and say to ourselves, I can't compete with that, and so maybe I shouldn't be in the game. But the people doing that, right, are people who have nothing else, who are doing nothing else. They've decided whole hog they are going to be YouTubers. That's it. That's what they're going to do, and they're going to go for all the viewership, and it's a full-time gig for them, and it kind of has to be. They get they get the best software, and they get the best cameras, and they really, really, really do it up. There's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. But I wasn't sure there was room for this, but I think in the past, I think almost the origins of YouTube were really heavy on something like this, something raw, something unedited, right? Leave in all the mistakes. It's probably why I like jazz, right? Who wants clean, antiseptic, perfect jazz? Good Lord. I mean, the mistakes are part of it, the liveness of it, the fact that you're seeing it as it comes, that it's stream of consciousness. There are people who do those kind of videos, and I like it. I hate when I see the little cuts and the cut. And I know that's almost a style, and it's fine, but because they're fixing everything and trying to make it perfect. I understand, but I like someone extemporaneously speaking. And if there are mistakes, leave them in there. It's fine. I like that. Like live radio. Like some podcasts that we listen to. That conversational element is fine. There's another reason that I was thinking, gee, I could do that. Is because this isn't what I want to do for my life. I like the idea of having a chance to sort of speak out and, get something across, even if I'm screaming into the wind. I like the idea of doing that. But I'm a working musician. I'm taking gigs. I'm not out playing a ton. I was forever, but since I've been up here, I've gotten into production and other things. So my gigs tend to be session work. So I just finished a project for a guy in Switzerland. Great. And then there was, before that, it was an album project for George Rabb in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And I did a whole bunch of horn parts for his latest record. Great. We got the producer and so forth. So that was a pretty big project. Now I'm doing stuff on my own. I'm doing cues for sync licensing, which is going to be interesting because I think I can probably fit in there. So we're going to see if I can fit in there. So we're going to do some of that. And I've got other projects I'm doing, but that's my life. My life is doing that. So this can't take up too much time. It can take up, do a video. Maybe I'm hoping, a video a week. Sometimes a video every 2 weeks, but I know consistency is important, but try to do that, but something that I can do and edit quickly and get up there with a minimum of fuss, yet at the same time, hopefully that immediacy, there's still room for that kind of content, that someone can still do that here. And I think so. And that's what I'm gambling on. That's what I'm going to try to do. So we're going to chat music. There's a couple of other things I think I want to give you guys here while I continue to see. Talk about immediacy. Talk about, see, the man has to take off his glasses to scratch his nose. I've done it a couple of times. The whole thing's nuts. Anyway, so immediacy, the real. We're gonna go for the real. Couple other things I've been thinking about. I mentioned jazz before, and lately I find myself moving increasingly away from jazz. It's become prescriptive. It's become a lot of videos of, I've never heard people play so well as the current generation of jazz musicians. They play fantastic. And usually I'm not interested because it doesn't move me. There are exceptions. Michael Sarian, trumpet player, I think is doing really interesting stuff. And there are guys, trust me, there are plenty of folks. But, not too long ago, Ahmad Jamal passed away. And I was thinking about Ahmad Jamal, and that Ahmad Jamal had a career basically because Miles Davis saw him playing in Chicago and thought he was fantastic. And Miles, speaking out about how much he loved Ahmad Jamal, gave Ahmad Jamal a career. And Ahmad Jamal was just wonderful. It was, you either got it or you didn't, but there was so much grace. And then I started thinking about how Miles, I remember hearing years ago, very eminent bass player, this goes back quite a while, remember telling me that he didn't think Miles Davis could have a career today. And that was 20 years ago or more. That player couldn't survive today. And that was then, and I think that's even more true today. And I don't think that's good news. I don't think that's good news. And the more and more and more I see, every video, you see a ton of them, whether it's Instagram or wherever, you see these short videos. It's people with enormous chops, just incredible chops, playing something at some blistering speed. And they play it perfectly. And again, it's great playing. But is there anything new about any of that? Really? It's kind of musical masturbation. I think we need a tilt towards guys playing something really pretty and guys playing something really heartfelt. Whenever whenever the pendulum goes way to one end, and I think that's where we're at right now, I'm going to go the other way. And I've always liked that kind of playing anyhow. I can play choppy stuff, and there's videos of me, I play choppy stuff. So I always liked that. I got very into that. I wanted to play like Freddie Hubbard. But the more and more time goes by, especially now that I'm in my dotage, I don't think I'm in my dotage, but I'm not the kid that I used to be. Increasingly, I just want to play something pretty and effectual. And I don't want to play in the I got to play real book tunes because I have to prove that I can play the changes to all the, I've done that and done that and done that, and I'm just, I don't know. So I'm not feeling, I want to do something, and I know the argument, everything's been written and everything's been done and there's nothing left to be done, right? I know there's only 12 notes and I get it, but we're looking so backwards. All we do is play. No, there's very little that I hear that sounds fresh and new and even trying to go for something else. Let me connect that to another thing that I was thinking about. The Ed Sheeran case. I said I was going to talk about pop music, but that's a good one because there are some really good arguments surrounding that. And I don't claim that there is a perfect one or that I have the truth. I have no monopoly on the truth, and I do not claim to have one. Right? So just understand that to begin with. But I was rooting kind of against Sheeran in this case. Now, Adam Neely makes the great point. I find Adam Neely difficult, by the way. Really bright guy. Really, really bright guy. Also just very sure that he's a bright guy. And I think he thinks the answer to everything is, if music was only more like a research paper, everything would just be great. We would just have great citations, see, because the only example that we're going to use, the only template we're going to have to use is obviously the one from academe. I'm not sure that's a good way to go about things. We're talking about the arts, where things are fairly subjective. But to Neely's credit, and I agree with this, nobody owns grammar, right? Nobody owns A minor 7. Right? In language, right? No one owns the or and or otherwise or togetherness. No one owns the words, right? No one owns that. Everyone gets to use that, right? Okay, and that is true. And there was also a piece in the Washington Post, music is going to be ruined because no one will be able to play in particular genres because someone's trying to own genre. And again, yes, do we have to be careful about that? Yes. That is a slippery slope. Yes. I don't disagree with that view. That's that's a fair argument. And I think an argument made in good faith. That's a good faith argument. And I don't disagree with it. However, what's the other side? The other side would be, okay, I'll think of an example. Some years back, 2016, Republican National Convention, Melania Trump does a speech. And whole sections of her speech were lifted, hook, line, and sinker, whole thing, from a speech Michelle Obama had made. Now, she could have said the same sentiments and done. That's fine. You could say all that. You can intend all the same things and mean all the same things. But you can't lift the exact. You can't, right? I can't go recite the Gettysburg Address and say, yeah, I came up with that. That's my thing. You can't do that. That's plagiarism. I can't go, dun, 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 dun. Hey, I think I'm onto something. I think it's going to be a big, big hit. No, you can't do it. It's plagiarism, period. Okay. So there's a Sheeran case. And in the Sheeran case, I heard it. Now, the jury in that case didn't hear it. Shows you how bad the legal world is at dealing with musical subjects. People who aren't musicians are the legal teams, explaining music to people who know nothing about music. And they don't play the two pieces. They give them, I guess there was some sort of, they played some things to give an idea, I guess some MIDI files or something, I'm not sure, but they played something. But they didn't just play the pieces back and forth. I think if they had, it would have been very damaging because, it's the same groove. He could have made the harmony more dense. He could have put it in another key. He could have changed the rhythm somewhat. There's a million things he could have done, right? He knew he didn't know what he was doing. Of course, I think he did. I think he lifted it. I think it's really obvious that he lifted it. So I was sitting there saying, how about this? People saying, well, you can't own genre and all that. Okay, all right, but does all of our music in 2023 have to be a ripoff of something from the 1970s, 80s? In the 1920s, were they stealing music from the 1850s, 1860s, 1870s, were they controlled by that? No. In the 1920s, recorded music started to happen, jazz started to happen. Louis Armstrong got called up to the Savoy Ballroom to play with King Oliver, and the music changed. They weren't looking backwards. They were creating their own thing. Imagine that. Something relevant to people of their time. Do you see that in pop music? I don't see that in pop music. I see people borrowing everything they can. Whether it's Ed Sheeran or Taylor Swift. I don't hate Taylor Swift, but I've never heard anything that she did that didn't harken back to something else. Would it be the worst thing in the world if we could change up our genres? Be forced to? Think of it this way. It's like fashion. Fashion, right? No one's inventing new pants. There are no new shirts We haven't grown new appendages as humans, and so we have to invent a new chemise to cover all of that in a different way. None of that is happening. All they could do is take what's there and see if they can make it bounce off the culture in a way that affects us differently. They're not inventing anything new, but they are at least trying to get us to react differently. That's fair. I don't see that happening musically. We could at least try to do that, right? We could do that. I don't see anyone trying. So I'll be honest with you, that's a little bit where my interest is. I would like to do something that sounds relevant and not be controlled by academicians saying what, this is what swinging is. Or I think a lot of those forms, are really close to being dead because they're not doing anything. They're not doing anything really new. All they can do is stay within the bubble. Is Broadway touching people? No, Broadway is a tourist trap. Tourists go, and that's how Broadway's been supported for a long time, doing either revivals or the same old stuff over and over and over again. The people who perform it are excellent, I grant you, but is there any new ground being broken? No. Straight theater is basically actors working for other actors. Jazz music is basically musicians playing for other musicians. There's not a lot of people checking out jazz. A lot of people don't understand it or just plain out hate it. Classical audiences are dismal. There's not enough of them. So those forms are in trouble. And I love some of those forms. I don't want them to be in trouble. But objectively, they're in trouble. And they're not even trying to reach. They've given up on people. And I think that's a huge mistake. So, look, Sheeran ended up winning, and then he acted like a creep afterwards. I thought he was very, the aw shucks. I'm just such an earnest guy trying to... The more he does that, the more I'm convinced this is a ruthless businessman who intentionally uses what's worked before and just pushes at people who never heard the original. I guess I'm a cynical bad guy. So he won. Okay. And again, there was no winning. No matter what decision came out, there was going to be good and bad from it. Yes, we're not going to own genres, and no one's going to own A minor 7. That's good. That's good that we've affirmed that. At the same time, boy, did he, that if that wasn't plagiarism, I don't know how good Lord, what do you have to do at this point? Do you have to play Beethoven's Fifth? I mean, I don't get it. So anyway, maybe this sort of content gives you an idea the sort of stuff we'll be chatting about. I hope that with every week I'll have some kind of idea and think, hey, has anyone been thinking about this one? And I'll definitely be trying to challenge you with some ideas. Now, feel free to leave comments. I know what this can be like. Feel free to leave comments, but I would put it this way. Try to be a little kind. It can be very tough out there in internet land. I'm not interested in the fight with anybody, and I don't claim that I've got some kind of answer. In fact, if you disagree with me vehemently, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes that helps a person figure out their own views and hone in on why is it I think this way, and it can clarify things. Sometimes hearing the guy you really disagree with can help do that. So keep that in mind. That's a possibility. But if you want to listen, you want to like, I love it, because the only way what I understand is, the only way this gets seen by anybody is, I believe this is if the algorithm picks up that there are some likes. You want to subscribe, that's great too, but I think the likes are even more important, or a comment or anything, any kind of interaction, I suppose, is, the way these things work. And we don't really know how these things work because they won't tell us. And that's fine, because people would game the system even more than they game the system now. So I'm not worried about all that. I'm just, interested in getting some things off, I suppose, off my chest, and then seeing out what you guys, if you interact, what you think. If you think I've got a point, if you think I'm full of it, that's okay. But I'd like to say, be a little kind. I am a fragile flower. We all are. We're just musicians here. You know, we're just artsy people. Um, but look, thanks for your time. I'll be doing it hopefully a lot, and these things will build up, and maybe some people will have an interest in these kind of topics. All right. Talk to you hopefully in a week. Bye.